let's move on to another segment. Um, I have shared it on the screen already. This is the housing market. So Naeem brought up an issue to me. So we all know that if you go to California, there are there are homeless people on every single corner, at every single bridge, everywhere, everywhere in LA. San Francisco, even worse. Maryland, Houston,
New York,
Boston, Miami, New York, Tallahassee, uh,
Philadelphia, Phoenix.
Philadelphia, Phoenix, you name it. There are homeless people everywhere. So instead of fixing the goddamn housing crisis here in the United States, and instead of ending homelessness, we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, even though we shouldn't be. We should be solving the homeless issue, right? I mean, right. So maybe I'm just me.
We
So
got we got we got we got to fund the Ukes. No, here's the thing. We got to fund the Ukes to make sure that they get us involved in a nuclear war. That's really what it is.
right. I'll
There'll be
squeeze you
no
in
more
both.
homeless. There'll be no more homeless issue, and the whole world is nuked, right?
Right, like your balls when women take them. Anyway, sorry, Naim, I had to do it because Oscar's complaining. Um, no, but in all seriousness, I mean, you wonder why there's so many homeless people, and it's because everyone in the establishment are pukes. They are ghouls. They are servants of the big donors, of federal lenders, of mortgagers, of servicers. And in our last live stream, we went over how they screwed over housing, black wealth, and home equity, and they caused 9.3 million people to lose their homes through foreclosures. So we
Mm-hmm.
went over all of that, and I went over the article yesterday with Naeem. So
Mm-hmm.
the Atlantic released a problem of released an article of what's the problem with the housing market, and we're gonna read this. And Naeem will stop in between, and you can comment. And you are the guru on this. I'm not. So, and you are also in real estate still, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know this better than I do. So let's get into it.
All right.
So this is from the Atlantic. Annie Lowry. Uh, is it?
Annie Lowry, yeah.
Annie Lowry. So it says, how many homes must the United States' expensive coastal cities build to become affordable for middle class and working poor families again? Over the past few weeks, I asked a number of housing experts that question. I expected a straightforward response. If you build X units, you reduce rents by Y%, which means that Washington, D.C. needs to build Z units to become broadly affordable again. I did not get such a simple answer. Quote, that's a difficult question with a lot of moving parts. Jenny Suits of the Brookings Institute told me, quote, are we assuming that all of these homes drop out of the sky today? Asked David Garcia, the policy director at the Turner Center of Housing Innovation at UC Berkeley. Chris Herbert, the managing director of the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies, gave me a long response involving land pieces, rental affordability, household formation, and building trends. Um, so Naeem, I mean, here, where's you from what they're saying? What's your take here? Before we go on with the article.
So the argument that's being made is that land isn't there isn't enough land, or land pieces is how we divide this up. The reality of the situation is the ultra wealthy are hoarding a lot of the land and owning big, huge chunks of land.
Right.
And they don't want their land to be parceled up or divided up a little bit, right? They don't want their neighborhoods to have what's called affordable housing. Like, let me give you an example. You know Adam Newman, right?
Yes.
Okay, so he had We Play, or whatever it was called.
Right.
Yeah, and that failed. It turned out to be a big fraud. He had a whole bunch of fraudulent things. Well, now he's starting a new company that's about, basically, he claims it's supposed to be about upstarting making affordable real estate.
Right.
And you know who invested
Right,
in it? Yeah, you know who invested in it? Mark Andreessen of Andreessen Horowitz.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you know what Mark Andreessen wants? He
Yes.
wrote a whole op-ed about how we need affordable housing.
Right.
But when there was a proposal for affordable housing developments to be built near his neighborhood, he actively petitioned the local government not to have that affordable housing built near his neighborhood. So all these guys are just contradicting themselves. Ultimately, they're claiming they want affordable housing, but oh dear, if we put affordable housing in their neighborhood. So their solution is to buy up as much of the land as possible so they could ensure that affordable housing doesn't happen near them. So that's why land pieces are claimed to be complicated, because, oh, well, now we have to figure out who owns what land. And because these rich dudes own big chunks of the land, we don't have enough land to build affordable housing. So I don't think I'm mad at Chris Herbert as much as I'm mad at like the reality of what it is. You know what I mean?
Yes. So this whole thing of, well, there's not enough land. No, there's enough land.
It's just people don't want affordable housing in their posh, wealthy, polished neighborhoods.
Right.
So they buy up all the land to make sure there's a buffer between them and the dirty, grummy, affordable housing, you know?
Right. So again, they're complaining, oh my God, we have too many homeless. We should build land. We should build houses. Oh God, it's in my neighborhood. Oops, now I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Still, all agreed that whatever the number is, it's enormous. Quote, all the numbers we have that address this question are huge. They are massive, Garcia said, and they're all a massive undercut. That strikes me as a problem. No one can say just what it would take to make Brooklyn affordable for workers who don't have a college degree, render San Francisco accessible to families with kids and elderly couples on fixed incomes, or allow extended family members in Boston to buy apartments within a few blocks of one another. That means we have no policy vision of how to make our biggest, most productive places affordable for all, and no plan to get there. All right, I hold on. Let me go here. So, extended families can't buy apartments in Boston. How do we make Brooklyn affordable for families? How do we get elderly couples and families with kids in San Francisco to make it affordable? We have no policy vision. We have no way to get there. There's a way to get there. It costs $20 billion to end homelessness in this country. It's called a housing first policy.
Okay. Tell me
You
more about
take up.
this.
So I don't know if you know this, but Finland ended their homelessness problem. And what Finland did was it built a bunch of houses in parts of land. The government bought land, and then what they did was they said, "All right, we're gonna build houses, tiny homes, regular homes, whatever we gotta build, and we're gonna put the homeless in here, and we're gonna send them to work training programs, whatever we need to do, rehab, whatever we got to do, and we're going to end homelessness." That's how you make it affordable. I mean, that's the simple answer. I mean, that to me is just bullcrap. Oh, we have no way to do it.
Okay, you're not wrong.
I mean, so what's your answer? How do we make it affordable? How do we get families to be able to buy in San Francisco and Boston and Brooklyn? I mean, what's your answer?
I just think there has to be, and I don't know how this happens, but more investments into affordable housing. And we got to quit focusing on just the profit margins. We got to also realize that we are killing the value of our real estate markets when we have so many unhoused people roaming the streets. Mm-hmm. And that's not to put the unhoused in a negative, paint the unhoused in a negative light, but that's to explain that, like, the reality of the situation is the more unhoused we have, it hurts our real estate markets. We're thinking of it as, oh, if we have to compromise and build some affordable housing, we're hurting our real estate markets. That does not hurt our real estate markets as much as the unhoused problem to start with.
Well, yeah. Do you want? Because again, there was a recent story on, I think it was California or Oregon. They recently released a thing that said we're gonna stop encampments and we're gonna businesses across the street from a residence are not going to want a bunch of homeless people across the street from a luxury hotel because no one's going to want to come. No one's going to want to bring their kids to this neighborhood if I just got a bunch of homeless dudes and dudettes walking around.
Mm-hmm.
That means my school district is probably one of the poorest. That means that we can't safely take our kids to the park. There's a lot of things that families worry about. And you, as a real estate agent, I'm sure you get those questions all the time. Is it a good area? That's the question that my dad gets all the time. And I'm sure that's a question you get. And I think the other thing is we have interest rates that are up the ass, up the wazoo.
Yep. Mm-hmm. No, that is correct.
So
7%, 7.14%, that kind of stupidity. Mm-hmm.
So why do you think that's a stupidity, and what do you think we should do about it as the expert?
I think that the Federal Reserve thinking that jacking up interest rates solves the inflation issue, right? Is missing that in the past 40 years, this is the most difficult time to buy a home because the raising of the interest rates isn't killing the housing inflation, really. All it's doing is making the mortgage that you would use to get that house, the mortgage through which you would use as a vehicle, right, to become more expensive.
That's right.
Because you're not just paying the price of the house that you're buying. You then have to pay an additional 7% or whatever rate you agreed on. That's assuming you could get a fixed rate mortgage in the first place, right? Some people don't even qualify for fixed rate. They have to get adjustable rate, and that just messes you up even more because that balloons, right, and continues to go up and down and all that insanity. But assuming you're qualified enough to get a fixed rate mortgage, you then have a situation where you're paying 7% more than the $1.3 million you're spending on the home you purchased.
Correct.
And what's 7%? What's 7% of 1.3 million?
Well, let's see. 7% of 1.3 million.
7% times 1.3 is 0.091.
So does that mean it's 91,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Times 100. I forgot to do that. So it's $91,000. So
and that's just on the principal. Remember, you're paying down also the equity.
That's right.
When the equity goes up, the value of your mortgage goes up, so that you're then paying more than just the principal. You're paying interest on the interest sometimes. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that 40% of California's homeless, or I think it's America's homeless, but California's homeless, 40% of them have jobs. 40% of them have good incomes, but that's the exact problem they're facing. I'm going to get a
lots of full-time workers in California are living out of their cars.
Exactly. Because I'm going to get an interest rate that's 6.5% or 7.3%, 7.8%. And then when the home equity goes up, now I got to pay interest on that interest. Are you kidding me? Hell no. The principal is already high. A house like my dad's easily $2-3 million in California, right?
Yeah.
So now I got to pay these.
And even the supposedly cheap cities like Las Vegas and Phoenix and Austin, because so many people have moved there, now their prices have gone up astronomically too. Try to buy a home in Vegas right now.
It's possible. It's not astronomically bad. My dad would be the better person to tell you.
But it's getting higher than it was this time 2 years ago.
It is. Oh, absolutely. Looking Californians moving here. Go back. Seriously, please. And that's what people don't understand is when you populate an area and you overpopulate it, the prices are going to go up. But that's what a lot of people are saying is I've got to pay $2 to $3.5 million off and the interest on that interest. Hell no. So, good explanation because I don't know that. And, this is not just unfair to Americans who want to move to these places. High rents and sale prices in major cities are a policy choice, one that puts gates around many of our most wonderful places and taxes the folks lucky enough to live there. And it is unfair to all of us. I think so.
It's unfair to those who are living there and having to pay these astronomical prices, and it's unfair to those who don't have the financial means to live there, but maybe they have a job opportunity waiting for them there, or a family member that they want to move in with living there, but they can't afford it. So it's unfair to all parties involved.
Exactly. And maybe the job pays really well, pays a good $60,000, $70,000,
But it still doesn't
like,
make the rent.
but that doesn't even make the rent because in LA and San Francisco and Hawaii, $90,000 isn't enough to live for one person. So again, you got a job opportunity in San Francisco, Boston, Miami, you can't move there. You got a Houston. Right, Houston's a lot cheaper than all those other cities. You got a family member that, hey, you know what? I'd like to get out of here. You can't move there because you can't afford it. And if you do live there, it's virtually impossible. You can't put your kids through college. You can't get your kids better schools. You can't pay for tutors. You can't remodel your house. You can't go on vacation. You can't invest properly because of the unfair prices and the unfair price gouging of this housing market.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all.
A United States with more abundant housing in its big cities would have a more productive, vibrant, and dynamic economy too, which is absolutely true. The best evidence for how much housing we need to build lies in the prices that people pay today. Nationwide, the share of renters who are considered quote burdened spending more than 30% of their income on rent and utilities, has climbed to 47%. 1 in 4 renters, about 11 million, spending more than half their income on shelter. Isn't that funny?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have rent control in this country. We don't have a tenant's bill of rights. We don't have any of that. But we're allowing rent to skyrocket, and we're allowing these landlords. And my landlord has skyrocketed our rent. He's been friendly to us. Let's just be fair about that, right? But they're doing that. They're remodeling their houses. They're charging absurd prices. And now if I'm earning $50,000 and I gotta pay $20,000, $30,000 in rent for the whole year, that's more than half my income just on rent.
Mm-hmm.
Absurd.
I mean, how many people are actually moving to like North Dakota, for example? Not a lot of people because it's not desirable unless you're in the oil industry. But other than that, it's not really a desirable place to live. So that's why that place, people will argue, oh my gosh, but there's some states that are cheap and affordable. If you want to move there, move there. What kind of job prospects do you have in a cheap and affordable state like North Dakota or Mississippi, right?
Exactly. It's too rural. Now, what about Texas? Texas is a lot cheaper than most places.
Texas is a growing state, and there's emerging job opportunities, and that's why you have lots of people moving to Texas. But Texas could eventually become the next California if more people are moving in. Which I don't think there's any harm in Texas growing, but we have to realize that the underlying issue of that of the lack of affordability in housing is what needs to be addressed. We can't just keep on finding another state that's empty to just have people move into. We have to find what the underlying root causes are, address them, and turn them around so everyone can live happily. Maybe someone doesn't want to move to Texas, but they cannot afford other than moving to Texas. There's no shame in moving to Texas. I like the place. It's a beautiful place. They got some good food. They got some spicy food. Yeah, it's real nice. It's the same place. It's the same place Matthew McConaughey's from, right?
Yeah.
But with that being said, it's not a solution to just keep on finding the next best state to move to until we're going to run out of all 50 states. You know what I mean? Like, soon people are going to move to, like, the tundras of Alaska or something. We gotta address the underlying issues, not just keep on saying, oh, well, this state is cheap, let's just move there.
Right. Renters today spend about 10 more percentages of their earnings more on housing than they did in the 1970s. Meanwhile, rising prices have also forced millions of younger Americans to delay home ownership, making it impossible for many to buy their way onto the property ladder, particularly in California and New York. Where not even a one bedroom, just a studio where you barely can fit your two legs inside and your one arm and your two arms. It's $3,000 for that one studio.
Yeah, it's a nice little rat box. Good luck trying to fit in.
Yeah, good luck trying to fit in, but you got to still pay me $3,000. Mm-hmm. And guess who runs that state? The Democratic Party. They are the majority owners of New York. They're the majority party in New York, and your Democratic establishment is allowing price gouging with rent. They're allowing
your Chuck Schumers, your your
Chuck Schumer, your
AOCs, your
AOCs,
Kathy Hochul's, all these guys.
your entire New York legislature,
The
your entire
Cuomo gang, whatever happened to them? But anyway,
yep, yep, and all you guys keep electing Democrats in New York. Keep electing the Democrats in New York.
well, at least you guys knocked out Sean Patrick Maloney. Did yourselves a favor there.
You did, yes. But
Lee Zeldin did not win governor's race, so now he's talking about potentially running to be the chair of the RNC. Oh, that's interesting because you have different people all wanting to run for chair of RNC against Ronna McDaniel.
yeah,
You have Mike Lindell of the Pillow guy. You have My Pillow CEO Mike Lindell. You have Harmeet Dillon, who I typically don't care to follow too much Republican politics, but she's actually on the nose. She's very correct about the fact that so much fake populism has pervade throughout the Republican Party and the RNC specifically. She says she wants to bring real populism. We'll see about that. To give you an idea of who she is was a former Trump lawyer, or her law firm represented Trump in different capacities in the past. She's based in California, but she's running against Ronna McDaniel, and now Lee Zeldin, who previously ran for governor of New York. I believe he's a New York congressman, correct?
I think so.
He is potentially going to vibe for that seat. So January is when the RNC has their winter conference and elections. I'd be curious to see.
Well, Ronna McDaniel is also a big Trump supporter, and
but
already said we're going to back him.
Is she as Trumpy as Mike Lindell?
No, but Mike Lindell is also an idiot.
You don't think he's winning the seat? Do you think? Do you think
no.
Ronna McDaniel is going to retain the seat, or do you think there's enough resentment against her to knock her out? Because I am hearing a lot of discontent with she's part of the old guard of the Republican Party. She's been around since the 90s?
90s, 80s, late 80s, early mid to late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, she was big on the George H.W. Bush stuff, the Ronald Reagan stuff. So she's pretty old. So I see her getting knocked out, if you ask me.
I could see her getting knocked out, but I think if she plays her cards right, I think she'll stay. So my point
she just needs the coveted Trump endorsement.
She does.
I'd be curious to see if Trump is going to give her that endorsement, or he thinks that Mike Lindell's better at sucking his.
Oh, Mike Lindell is definitely much better at that. I wonder if he's better than Melania. Anyway, my point is, you guys have a Democratic establishment running New York City, and these establishment fucks, these pukes, are causing your rent to go up.
Chuck Schumer to say New York City, all he's going to say is New York shitty. Because he probably lives in a nice, comfy home somewhere in D.C.
Absolutely, and he has a really nice, comfy home in the Hamptons.
Yeah,
and he has a nice home in the ritzy part of New York. But
Chuck
the point
Schumer
is
some corrupt ass shit. But anyway.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can imagine what he did to get that house. But the point is, you have a bunch of Democrats running that city, running New York City and New York State, that are causing this rent crisis, that are causing this housing unaffordability crisis. And guess what? You guys keep voting them in. And guess what? The prices in New York keep going up. Keep voting Democrat, and that's what you get. Now, people make painful choices to keep their housing costs in line with their income. Millions of families do not live where they want to, or in the kinds of homes they want to, or with the people they want to. That's right. When the mortgage on a townhouse is too costly, families keep renting their rundown apartment. When a third bedroom costs too much, parents give up on having a third kid. First off, even if you live in a fine area and the cost of living is not very high, like Springfield, Illinois, you shouldn't have kids if you don't have $50,000 to $100,000 in the bank. I don't think you should be having 3 kids. But this is a public policy catastrophe too. The problem is largely, if not exclusively, the result of the country not permitting enough homes where people want them. Although some communities in the interior of the country, especially in the South, have allowed housing construction to keep up with rapid population growth, the superstar metro areas of the Northeast and West Coast have not. Quote, the reason California has the affordability problems we have now is because we did not build, said Garcia of the Turner Center. In the 1960s, 1970s, even into the 1980s, we built between 200,000, 300,000 homes per year. In our most recent economic boom, we were building 100,000 homes a year. So it went down by at least $200,000 a year.
And you got to remember, our most recent economic boom was our most long lasting economic boom, our most historic economic boom. It was the boom. The boom he's referring to here is the boom that began in the second half of the Obama administration, all the way through to the Trump administration, to when COVID hit. So the reality situation is the economic boom that took place at that period was the longest lasting economic boom in recent American history. So, it wasn't an economic boom for all, I'll tell you that much, but it was an economic boom nonetheless. Yeah, I won't argue that it was an economic boom for all, but it was an economic boom nonetheless. And the fact that we produced more homes and less homes per year by half or more than half, reduced in that economic boom than we did in shorter, less secure economic booms in the 70s and 80s, for example, says that either we were really, really going aggressive in the 70s and 80s, which is not true, or the alternative, which is the correct alternative, we were purposely not building enough homes in this most recent economic boom, and that was intended to make sure that the prices spike more than naturally, an artificial spike. And that was because some of these big real estate investors and developers wanted to recoup the differences or the losses they experienced in the 2008 crash.
So again,
it was greed.
This is on purpose.
Yeah,
this
it was greed.
on purpose. The reason, ladies and gentlemen, there were not enough homes built. The reason you didn't see a lot of building going on in your neighborhoods and in your counties and in your suburbs and in your rural
The big
areas.
developers wanted to recoup the losses they experienced in 2008. And they couldn't be okay with the fact that they were the ones who fucked up in 2008.
Exactly. They're the ones that caused their own losses. It wasn't you, wasn't me, it wasn't your neighbor. They tell you to blame your neighbor, blame your Trump supporting neighbor, hate your neighbor, hate your friends. They want you to blame each other. The real crux of this matter here, of this problem here, are the Wall Street big developers and investors and the big landlord corporations that caused this problem in the first place. That subprime mortgage crisis, the housing foreclosure crisis under the Obama administration that we talked about on the last live stream, which you can check out on the channel. That was all done to help the big banks, to help the big investors. And that's why we don't have housing in this country. That's why we don't have enough. They weren't building in the 70s and in the 80s. They were doing what they're doing now. They were purposefully allowing prices to spike. They were purposefully, because there was a crash in the 70s. So there's no way they were building that. And in the 80s, you had that terrible theory of trickle-down economics. And look, Ronald Reagan did cut inflation at least by half. The problem is
he punished employees by doing that. He busted up the unions. He squashed. He ballooned unemployment rates. He made sure the labor force was designed so it could favor the corporate bosses and not the employees. And that's what Jerome Powell's trying to do now with the raising of interest rates today. Same exact idea. It's the Volcker curve, the stuff that they were trying to do back in the 80s.
Exactly. So when you crush the unions, when you crush the labor force, when you balloon unemployment, when you punish your employees, you tax tips. By the way, he taxed. I spoke to a woman who was a waitress in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan, and she was on the bus with me, and she said, "Yeah, we used to get tips, and Ronald Reagan will tax our tips. So you'd have to. So taxes went up under Reagan, not down, and so." and yet the Democrats, their hero is Ronald Reagan. Okay, and so when they raise the interest rates, when they kill your labor force, when they balloon your unemployment, when they don't build homes on purpose just so that they can raise the prices, just so that they can get money back in their pockets, even though they got a government bailout of over $100 billion.
Mm-hmm.
They still need more money because they're greedy assholes. And that's why you have that's part of the reason, out of all these reasons, you have so many homeless people. Just saying, ladies and gentlemen.
But they don't want the homeless people in their neighborhoods. Oh dear,
Nope.
no.
Nope. Keep those ghetto people out of here.
Take
Right?
them out of
Exactly.
here. I want my rich kids to play around in their little fenced yard with their two little fluffy white dogs, and make sure that they don't get impacted. They don't get impacted by this homeless grub and whatever else bullshit they want to call homeless people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're gonna sit here and say we can't have our real estate prices be impacted. So make sure you push these guys so far away from us.
And again,
it's some hypocrisy.
Right. And again, it's a lot of hypocrisy. But again, we also went over on this channel about over a year ago with remember when the Democrats were putting up that fucking stunt? That, by the way, it was a stunt because it got approved by Nancy Pelosi. They didn't do that just on accident. It was on purpose. It was planned. It was curated. It was all of that. When they were the eviction moratorium and the Supreme Court struck it down, we found out that the Senate majority PAC, the House majority PAC, the Pelosi's of the world, the Schumers, the Jeffries, and all of them, Hakeem Jeffries, they're all funded by these landlords and these big corporations. That's why you didn't have an eviction moratorium extended. That's why you have these housing crises, and that's why the rich are able to say, we don't want these ghetto housing pricks here, homeless pricks here. We want our flat neighborhoods to remain that way, and we want them to remain prim and proper, and we don't want you to build in our neighborhoods or in the land that we don't even touch. That's why, because they run the Democratic Party, and yes, they run the Republican Party. We all know who the Republicans are, but no one tells you who the Democrats are. And on this channel, we tell you who the Democrats are, period.
Yeah, Hakeem Jeffries, the new minority leader in the House, right? He's going to become the new minority leader. No one's going to oppose him. No AOC, no Ilhan Omar, no Rashida Tlaib. None of those guys, not even Jamal Bowman, none of them going to oppose him, right?
No,
he's going to go sit here and cruise to victory, and then he's going to take the Democrat Party to the right. And he's already talked about that. He said, where we can find common ground with the Republicans, we will work with them. And we will make sure that the theme of the next Congress is bipartisanship.
Yeah. What happened in 2011, when bipartisanship was the theme? There was no bipartisanship. Why? Because the Republicans figured out, hey, we got power. We can use this power. Why are we going to work with Democrats? It makes no sense. And then
I think Hakeem Jeffries is delusional.
Exactly. Then when the Democrats cry, when they lose more seats in the next midterm, and when they lose the goddamn presidential election, maybe it's because you work with Republicans. Work with Republicans on issues that working class people care for. No, where they work with Republicans are, how can we give Wall Street more loopholes? How can we make housing
more money to Ukraine?
More aid to Ukraine. So that's who you're voting for. Democrats that want to be Republicans. That's who you're voting for. So let's quote, that is the start and the end of the story when it comes to California and elsewhere. New York City issued fewer new housing permits in the 2010s than it did in the 2000s or in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. It has, year after year, created more jobs than homes. So we got more people making money in New York. Maybe not a good amount of money. Maybe not a good amount of money. Maybe not even enough to live. Maybe not even enough to go buy a pair of socks at the store or buy a banana at the grocery store. However, we're creating more jobs. We're just not giving you housing because we're favoring the banks and we're the Democratic Party. And all we care for is that these big investment firms and these big landlord corporations and these real estate firms and the big banks and the federal lenders or federal contractors are all filling our pockets, and then they're getting a bunch of loopholes from us. That's why you have all these jobs and no homes. Yeah. Nationally, household growth and new construction have been essentially coincident for the last 7 or 8 years, said Herbert of Harvard. Typically, housing construction exceeds household formation by about 20% because they're always removing housing that has outlived its useful life. We haven't been doing that for a long time. Just by that very simple measure, we're not building enough. There's a theme here. We're not building enough. They didn't do it in the 70s. They didn't do it in the 80s. Ronald Reagan ruined a lot of crap in the 80s. They didn't do it in the 90s. They barely did it in the 2000s. And from the 2010s and on, oh, by the way, they caused the Great Recession and the subprime mortgage crisis in 08, 07, and 08.
Mhm.
And then in the 2010s and on, they have not built homes because they want to recoup all those profits they lost and screw you over, even though they already screwed you over.
Mhm.
So, okay, I just want people to know the theme. M. Nolan Gray, the housing revolution is coming. The answer is to build more, a lot more. Rough.
Rise and shine, honey bun.
Good morning, honey. Did you smell the coffee?
Ooh,
Rough.
that coffee is strong. Stronger than that Cuban coffee.
God damn. I don't know what's stronger than that. Rough estimates of what economists call the housing gap, how much the United States would have to build to bring it back in line with historical trends. It says aren't difficult to come by. Looking at the number of American households and the number of vacant housing units, Freddie Mac, the government-sponsored purchaser of mortgage-backed securities, yes,
Freddie Mac.
uh-huh,
You gotta love him.
estimates a current supply shortage of 3.8 million units, driven by a 40-year collapse in the construction of homes smaller than 1,400 square feet.
So this isn't just a new thing for the 2010s and the 2000s. No, this has been going on for 40 damn years.
So it's been going on since at least the 1970s.
Man, you gotta love Reagan's ass for that one.
Yeah, 50 years. At least in the 1980s. Yeah, 1980s.
And you know what? You know which homes are the ones that are 1,400 square meters or 1,400 square feet or less? Those are the starter homes, the ones that a little family starts. You know, just a husband, a wife, and maybe their first child. And that's what gets you to the point where you start to slowly build wealth. You start to slowly build asset accumulation because you start out with this 1,200 square foot home or this 1,300 square foot home, and you continue. You know, you sell that home when when you could turn a good profit on it, when you've developed some equity in it, you've cultivated some of that equity, and then you go around and maybe buy a slightly bigger home and you start to build up. And that is the secret behind American wealth building, not this whole like cryptocurrency scams with the FTX or the BlockFi, not with all these weird dudes who are telling you get rich quick schemes and Ty Lopez and all those bullshitters, right? No, the real way is through starting out with your nice little starter home. And the problem is there's no such thing as starter homes anymore because they're not being built.
Exactly. Can I find the unit again? So it says he estimates a current supply shortage of 3.8 million units.
Let that sink in. 3.8 million units. And remember, each unit should house between 4 and 6 people.
So 3.8 million times 4, what is that?
Going to be a little under 16 million, but that's 16 million more people who are unhoused than originally would have been the case. At
And
least.
times 5? Times 5, 3.8 million times 5, what's that?
Damn. Whew.
Let's see. 3.8 million times 5.
3,800,000 times 5 is 19 million.
So it's 19 million Americans that are unhoused. How about times 6?
19 million more than would have been originally the case.
Exactly. Now, what about 6? Let's see. 19. Wait, hold on. Let's see. Hold on. 3.8 million times 6.
3,800,000 times 6 is 22,800,000.
Wow.
And that's not just how many people. That is more than would have been originally the case. Because the originals are the people who maybe are suffering from mental health things or choose to be homeless. There's a few people who do make that.
Yes, there
Very
are.
rare.
And
Very
there's a good book called Beneath the Neon, and it's about Vegas. And so beneath the strip there are tunnels. Beneath the Rio, beneath the Wind, beneath the Circa, beneath which is a new one, beneath the Mandalay Bay. There are all these tunnels of people that either lost everything from gambling or the crisis, or they just were like, fuck it, I just want to be homeless. The point is, there's a different variety, yes, but that's 3.8 million housing units
that don't exist. That should exist.
not
That
built.
don't exist. That should exist.
That should exist. That's 3.8 million housing units. That is between 16 to 22 million Americans not able to get a house. 16 to 22 million.
Wow.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
That is insane.
That is more people than balls I've lost in my life.
What was that?
I said that's more people than balls I've lost in my life.
And you've lost plenty of those.
Yeah, but it hasn't gotten up to 16 million yet.
I like how you say yet.
Yeah, it's going to get there eventually, let's be honest. I wonder what's going to get there first. Me, my balls, or the population of homeless people still going up because the Biden administration, among others, don't want to do anything to address the crisis in a real way.
Well, I think your balls, but that's because it'll happen faster because of all the girls. However, he just said something important, ladies and gentlemen. Biden and the Democrats don't want to help you. Remember that eviction moratorium that was extended because of the virus? Oh, right, it wasn't, because Biden never told the Democrats to do it. And when
Cori Bush was sitting outside the Capitol with her little lawn chairs. Yeah,
right?
Cori Bush was out there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm gonna sleep out here. That was a stunt.
Yeah. She had some nice blankets, and she kept herself warm. I bet you Nancy Pelosi sent her a warm meal from home.
Yeah, a warm meal from home. Who has someone with a $10,000 fridge full of really fancy ice cream and the Speaker of the House sending them warm meals and warm blankets and having warm blankets on Skid Row?
I want to bet Nancy Pelosi went ahead and sent her some of them fancy ice creams.
How would you want to bet that there's like a vanilla caramel gray ritzy ice cream that if you're not rich you can't take a bite,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, so Nancy Pelosi's not helping you. Instead of voting for an eviction moratorium, they recessed the House, and at the time AOC and the rest of them had to run back to the House to get them to do a moratorium. They should have voted on this before. Instead, they played the blame game. That's what they did. They played the blame game. That's all they did. So this is why the Democratic Party is corrupt. Mm-hmm. They are. And anyone who says they're not are chumps. They are. I don't care who. I don't care who.
They're worse than chumps. They're one-pump chumps.
Exactly. They are chumps, and they're Democratic bootlickers, and they're misinformed. They're misinformed because the Democrats are not here for you. Where's the rent control, Democrats? Where's the rent control?
Where's that Gavin Newsom? I don't hear nothing from him coming out of California with some rent control shit.
No, but you know what they're trying to do in New York? We're just gonna put the mental health people in jail.
Yeah, we're gonna put Eric Adams, even
though they don't want
step up the police force. Yeah, Eric Adams goes out and sends some more cops to pick up the mentally ill.
There's no more cops in the street, and that's the problem. We're putting cops.
Eric Adams is a cop.
Exactly. We put a cop in charge of a city. The problem is the cops. We're giving them too much to do, and that's the reason we have so many goddamn shootings. That's one of the reasons. Because we're giving them too much to do, and they don't know how to deal with people. They're impatient, and they're taught to kill whatever they come across. We should
Trigger
be
happy.
sending social workers to these cities and to these homeless people, helping them out, and I guarantee you we'd have a better situation. But no, we got a Democratic Party in charge of government that doesn't give a shit about you or your families, and you guys keep voting for them. People keep voting for the Democratic Party, and then I hear, oh, we got to protect democracy. Yeah, we don't have a goddamn democracy when your oligarchs took it over, and this is the problem we're now encountering. A housing issue with all these mechanisms going at it because the Democratic Party took a bunch of money from big real estate corporations, investment firms, landlord corporations, the big banks, federal lenders and contractors, and guess what? They are against you. They're not for you.
Mm-hmm. Amen, brother. Amen.
I'm just passionate because I'm tired of seeing people homeless when I know there's a solution and when I know the people in power aren't doing jack shit to solve the issue.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
The group Up for Growth also arrived at an estimate of 3.8 million using data on the total demand for housing and the overall supply of habitable available units. The National Association of Realtors compared the issuance of housing permits with the number of jobs created in 174 different metro areas.
Mm-hmm.
It found that only 38 metro regions are permitting enough new homes to keep up with job growth in more than a dozen areas, including New York, the Bay Area, Boston, Los Angeles, Honolulu. Let's see, Miami and Chicago. Just one new home is getting built for every 20 plus jobs created. So 174 counties. And how many? Let's see. To keep up, it found that let's see. Hold on. So compare the issues of permits with the created the jobs. It found that only 38 metro regions, 38 out of 174.
Wow.
One for every 20. Let's see. It's right here. Is getting built. One new home is getting built for every 20 plus jobs created. One home for every 20 jobs. Only 78 of 174 metro areas are allowing permits. You see, this is the problem. The NAR estimates
National Association of Realtors, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Estimates a building gap of as many as 7 million units. These numbers draw on data such as vacancy rates, household formation trends, and building trends, but none of the estimates capture what I've come to think of as the affordability gap, the difference between the housing we have and the housing we would need in order to ensure that working class people could once again live in our big coastal cities for a reasonable cost. So we're going to stop there with this article because it's going to get me even more mad.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, let's get your ending before I give mine while I get the next tab. Let's get your ending thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, To be real with you, it's a major problem that's going to take a lot of effort to address.
Right.
There's gonna have to be policy shifts, but there's also gonna have to be changes in the American perception of what a home is, because so many rich people think that you just buy as many homes as they want and just rent them out and become the landlord class, right? You have BlackRock doing that kind of stuff. You have other guys doing that kind of stuff, and so many people being, unfortunately, I don't think it's by choice, but being okay with just being a permanent renter class. We have to demand more rights to owning homes, not just renting them. Because then the oligarch class, the plutocrat class, are going to sit here and buy up all the homes and charge us an arm, a leg, and a shoulder to be tenants for in perpetuity.
Right.
So we have to change our mindset. Policy has to change, and a demand to build more homes is the key issue. And it's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to keep on having this conversation. It's going to take housing rights activists to get on the streets and demand their rights. It's going to take a lot.
Because what would you, and I agree
Because it took 40 years to get here to where we are now. 40 years of corruption, 40 years of all kinds of different chicanery and bullshit that these guys have been pulling, and we're in such a deep hole. It's going to take a while to dig ourselves out. It really is. And that's not for you to lose hope. That's just to tell you we got to work hard. We got to bust our asses
and back them up, right?
Mm-hmm. Where are you, Antoine?
Come on, Antoine. Anyway, but there you go. Again, what you described is people power. And, people tell you to hate your neighbor. Hate your neighbor because he's a Trump supporter.
I voted for Trump. You voted for Obama. We shouldn't give two shits. We should all stand up together. You know what I mean?
Right. Forget that whole, hate your neighbor. Stop focusing on your neighbor as a Trump supporter. Yet on the issues you can work with them on, work with them. On the issues you can't, and they're really nutcases, then fine. That's okay. We understand that. But don't
actively try to beat them with a stick. Just leave them be. Whatever.
Exactly. And not only that, but you got to think about it. What brings people together? Working class issues. I can't afford my rent. I can't afford my groceries. I can't afford my power. I can't afford
multiracial, multi-generational working class.
Multi-generational working class.
The stuff Bernie Sanders talked about until he sold himself out.
And made millions of dollars, and then voted for the largest upward transfer of wealth in human race history. $4.25 trillion all to Wall Street, and you got a crummy $1,000 check. Or a 50, or was it 1,500, whatever it was, and then a $600 check, and then another like $1,400. That's all you got, and all these guys who continue to recoup their benefits, they've more than recuperated their benefits.
Yeah,
wouldn't you agree? So if they've already done that, and the government keeps bailing them out, where's our bailout? Where's ours? And it's going to take people power. The government hates when people come together. When people come together, I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian American, South Asian Pacific Islander, Muslim, Indian, Native American, Republican, Libertarian, Green, a Democrat, whatever you are, independent, you all need to come together. Everyone needs to come together and fight these assholes who are in government that are screwing you over and creating this. This is not a household crisis, a housing crisis that just fell out of the sky. They created it. They created it.
Yeah.
So you got, and Oscar said that's he said a joke that's a girl's favorite phrase for you.
I created it.
Something like that. I forgot the joke, but so there you go. Come together, fight these guys, and watch them change. Why do you think Joe Biden? And we're gonna get into the strike later on. Actually, let's get into Bush. real quick, and then we'll go
Let's do
into
some motion. And I got some breaking news for you. If whenever you have me to present it.
Okay, so hold on a second. We're gonna go over after this the thing we have on the screen here, shared on the screen, of George Bush repeatedly lying about 9/11. Naeem, and on this video, if you want me to pause it, just tell me, okay? Because you've done that before. But the Democrats blocked railway workers from striking because they understood that railway workers run this goddamn country, and if they strike, everything stops. So we need a general strike, and we need this crisis fixed.